The question has been asked to me, is real animator training
library the real deal?
Is that real animator training real? Absolutely.
The real animator training provided by AMB Animation. It is absolutely the best ever.
Is real animators training for real? Yes, it is.
Where have I been learning animation? Well, the Real Animator Training Library.
And there's so many videos in the library that you could learn forever.
I'm just so happy with the way that I've progressed since I've started in the AMB Animation Library.
I'm a post-production artist. I'm also a member of the AMB Real Animator Training Library.
Is AMB's Real Animator Training for real? I definitely have to say I think it is.
I've been to art school for 4 years, and I've never had any lesson that was as good as the ones that AMB gave me.
AMB animation can be a life changer. Certainly was for me.
I totally love it. That's what I have to say. That's the way I have to say that I love it, because I must admit that at first I didn't trust it too much. I never thought that would make that difference in my life.
So I went ahead and hopped on into the library, and that library is just so valuable, so many things you can learn, and every video is like packed with this information that I would never be able to get anywhere else.
I bought this in support because it has changed my life, and you know, everyone's lives are being changed by this, and this experience has been great.
It's just truly amazing. I may have said that already. But yeah, it's been one of the best things that's happened in my life.
Is Real Animation Training Library real? It doesn't get realer. Thanks.
So, are you gonna join the library?
Hello, and welcome once again to another edition of AMB Animation Livestream. Right, well, I think I'm going to do another one of these live streams today. It went a lot better than I thought it would, the last one, when we did these two story panels in the sketchbook. And I'm going to be doing another story panel today. Let me just share with you what I'm going to be doing. It's going to be a bit of visual development art as well as storyboarding. So some of you will remember, let me find it, this particular drawing. So it started life like this, and I then wanted to take it a little bit further, so I had a little play and did this. Now this is all the things in my mind, but it is not accurate, it's not right, it's, you know, I'm still not going to go for full accuracy with this, but it's got to be better than this. This was the first kind of little exploration. So as I've now got this sketch pad to do this work a lot, you know, we're doing the groundhopper mood boards, and I'm planning the board and the concept art through this sketch pad. So I'm going to be taking it a little bit further. What I've done here is I've given myself some references for the drawing that I'm going to do on this side. That's what the reverse end of the page, these sketch pads are, is for me to plan out things. Of course, at first we were doing playing with the great ones. So today I'm going to be doing that drawing. Now it involves a little bit more perspective than this one, even though this seems like a perspective drawing. You'll all remember I was very intuitive and suggestive with that. I'm going to stay in that mode. I'm not going to get my rulers out and go mad, but we're going to have to be a little bit more mindful for a shot like this. So we're going to be doing that. I've made the plan today. As usual, the people on the chat, feel free to talk away. This is like a hangout stream where I'm just going to be working and I'm going to be chatting to you all and talking about what I do. So I'll quickly say hello to Daniel F. Ferraz, Charlene, Giles, Kitchikat, and Caden Valdez. How are you? Good to see you're still keeping up your dinosaur drawings. All right, let's begin. What I might want to do, a little tip to stop me from awkwardly, because the way the webcam's set up, but even just for quick, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my phone here, my beautiful wife, the real AMB lady, on there. I'm going to get my phone here and I am going to take a photograph of this, right? So I've just snapped that and I'm going to have that next to me while I work, right? So it's going to be, I'm going to be a lot able to reference that image a little bit, so it's just going to be right next to me here. This isn't the ideal setup for me. Normally I have a nice animation drawing board that I like to sit on and work, but we got to live stream these videos somehow, right, before I can work that out a little bit better. What I'm doing is I'm blowing that up so it's a little bit more like how I want for reference there. Okay, so again I'm gonna side of the pencil. Hopefully the camera will focus, not try to autofocus, because I've turned off autofocus. I figured out how to do it. I figured there must be a way. So I'm going to have the camera on a slight tilt and I'm going to figure out my horizon line first, right? And I'm going to have just one vanishing point. As I said, I don't want anything too... I'm not going too crazy with the perspective, trying to get all of it so 100% accurate, but I'm just going to have one vanishing point, and then I'm going to intuitively make my grid, right, like this. So then I'm going to figure out my ceiling and my floor, right? So that's my ceiling, probably a little bit higher like there, and my floor around about there like that. So again, I'm not going to work so hard on the perspective, but what I like to do, and this you see me doing this in Storyboard Pro a lot when I'm roughing out boards. In that I don't turn on any grids or use any guides for perspective. I like to intuitively draw and cheat and do what feels nice, but of course if you want to play around with that, you got to understand the basics and the rules first, right? So I'm not really going to work too hard at this, but it's just there to kind of help me continue with my guide, right? So now as I go along, let me just feel my way for the floor a little bit, right? Right. So I'm gonna move around here, like just feel my way for that. Not gonna bother about the ceiling just yet, right? So now I'm gonna think about the door area. Well, not the door, the main entrance, which is probably gonna be around about here. Now I'm gonna think about feeling my way for the perspective in regard to that little section, right? Just what feels right. Pull and play till it feels right. There we go. That's gonna haunt me for the rest of my life now. Right, so then I'm gonna think about, well, maybe I want to change that. I want to make the walls a little steeper and the ceiling a little higher, right? So I'm gonna keep thinking about this until I get what I'm going for, right? It's a little bit different to my original sketch, which was this, right? Which is a lot more even, right? So I'm playing for the pushing the drama a bit more, giving the camera a little bit lower. Then there's gonna be so I'm kind of happy with that, right? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna consolidate that with some lines, right? Lines. Again, I'm not, as I said, this is rough storyboard and rough visual development art. I'm not so interested with 100% accuracy at this stage, but it's got to be more accurate to when it goes to concept and background development and background art. It's got to be, you know, a little bit more accurate than the previous stuff that I was doing. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to knock that back with my putty eraser. So that gives me my kind of rough guide for all that. Now I know a little bit about the inside of the temple from the... Hey Galen, how are you doing? I got your message. Sorry I didn't get back to you. Galen kickstarts his own comics. Galen Art by Galen is online. Sorry Galen, forgive me. That's his entrance. He has to have that entrance. And he messaged me. He says, "Why don't you turn this into a comic? It looks really good." I appreciate that, Galen. Actually, you're somebody who I was looking to get involved with the crowdfunding campaign. And I wanted to release a art of book where the storyboard panels were presented in a comic-like fashion. And you know, I'd hire somebody to assemble that and help that for me, and I'd hire somebody to manage the crowdfunding campaign and all that. So I was thinking of getting in touch with you a little further down regarding exactly what you're talking about and seeing if you'd want to help out. Obviously there'll be money involved, and with the kind of budget we're talking about, it would be a pretty decent amount considering the level of the production that we're going for here. So more on that, and we'll definitely be talking about that in the future, my friend. So thanks for the message. I really appreciate that. So now I'm gonna put a few maps of where things are gonna be before I kind of finalize those things out. So the door is going to be here. The door is steep. Actually, the door is probably a little bit steeper. If I'm going to divide this into 4 quarters, the door will probably, I'm guessing, be... No, perhaps this feels about right. So you see, before any drawings going, this is like the construction of the shot, where all the texture mapping, if you're a CG man, you'll kind of know what I'm talking about, will be going on top. So again here, I'm not mathematically working out the door or the ruler or with a ruler or anything like that. I'm intuitively feeling it, and then because a lot of it is going to be drawn and shaded in the dark, so we've got room for artistic license and things like that, right? So then we're going to have 3 layers of bricks along here like this. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. See, we're losing perspective there, but it doesn't matter, right? So that's the wall here. So that's that figured out. As long as I feel like I got something of value. I thank you, Galen. You definitely have. You definitely have. And a coffee table style art of... I could already put a coffee table style art of Groundhopper, because all of you have seen the stages of development when he started life as a Mickey Mouse character, and there was the little live action fight test that I did with him. Then the next installment, there was an early storyboard where he was training with his master as a young kid, and it was still very much in that kind of like Mickey Mouse phase design that he had. Then it kind of switched a little bit, and we had the kicking animation test done, and the now the newer kind of colored animatic we got done. There's tons of material where I reckon I could already get something together and produce a quality book. But I want to take this stuff a little bit further. I've got a nice dialogue test that I'll be doing with the villain, the Great One, and want to take that further, and then we're going to think about doing a nice crowdfunder with tons of interesting material. Right, so again here I'm kind of working out the door. So many of you who've seen the Santa series that's in the edutainment archives now, when I was doing the layouts of that, will recognize again just about how I'm working right now. It's like just using the bare bones, the bare basics of the rules of perspective, but very, very quickly, and getting my ruler out just to intuitively draw along my rough suggestions without caring too much about the mathematical precision, okay? Because a lot of this is going to be shaded in the darkness, right? So we're going to have bricks along here, right? Which are going to be big stone slabs, which look really simple at the moment, but you'd be surprised what a little bit of intuitive crumbling and cracks drawn on that will create, which is why I kind of made a little joke and said it was like a texture map in a CG project, right? Because some of you know that I have been involved with CG in my life. It's not really my thing, but then we've got this. But I can, for building environments, I mean, it's very good. And one thing we might want to do if we get the budget. Mr. Leon's here. Let's just say a few hellos to people. Mr. Leonella Ray. Wow, what a nice name. We've got that. Rusty Rebels, Copper Star, Mr. Creative. Okay, and the usual suspects. So just saying hello to people in the chat. Right, so here we've got, it's the lighting. I need to get a nice ring light, as Charlene suggested, because my LED light for my face is not quite strong enough for this. But, you know, I think in the meantime, these are just little test streams, so it'll do. Now we've got bricks coming along here, right? So I'm going to kind of just feel my way along here. You see, really these could, if I was being precise, I would be lining all these up with a ruler and all that kind of stuff, but I don't, you know, as I said, and there's going to be some pillars covering these things anyway, right? So I'm just feeling my way intuitively along here, right? And the ceiling is going to be like that, right? And I can put a few lines there to help that along. Right, so what I'll do is I'll just smear that a bit and start putting some quick guidelines in. So you can see that even though I'm trying to keep the ruler and the technicalities of the drawing to a minimum, right? I still need something for this drawing to be just a little bit more than the suggestive scribbles that I've been doing prior to it, because I want to take it to the stage before, you know, if I was going to hire a visual development artist or at the very least a digital painter to paint this up and use it as the background, if I couldn't afford any more visual development art, it has to be a little bit more than the previous incarnations of it. You see, I'm really being lazy with that. That's really, I should be rotating that from a different angle. Right, let's do it this way. Excuse me while I turn the pad over. This is the way to do it. Right. So down. And I don't even need these things to really line up, but as long as my lines are giving the suggestion, because as I said, there's going to be a curtain on the wall, there's going to be all kinds of there's going to be pillars, there's going to be a lot of shading and smudging. We won't even really see these lines that I'm drawing here, but that's just for my own sake, just so I can have some, as I'm looking at it, some accuracy as I'm building on it. Right. So let's just put these lines in here like that. And then on here we will have smaller bricks. Right. So this is, I must confess, the most boring part, but probably the most important part of the whole process, right? So as I've been doing storyboarding throughout my life, and one of the things before I quit and this stuff became less in demand and less sought after, was as I could very quickly create really nice mood sketches, which were more than just the simple rough storyboard panels that you see, and the directors really appreciated that. And I was able to do that by doing what I'm showing you here in front of here, just by kind of like making sure that I spend enough time on the initial planning and framework, almost like thumbnailing and animation, but not being too religious about it. So, because we got to remember, with storyboard, everything's a suggestion, and by not being too religious about it, I could then shade on top and create nice kind of mood lighting with the pencil, and everything would appear, oh, that's so detailed, that's so nicely drawn, but it's actually really intuitive and just following the bare basic rules. It's like when you do a good piece of cartooning and you take anatomy and you know anatomy, but you push the anatomy a lot more, right? But the thing is also, like, for example, I am far better with characters than I am with environments. So my anatomy is far stronger than my perspective, but I know enough about perspective to pull off a drawing like this, right? And it'll serve its purpose, which is pretty much what a storyboard artist needs to be, right? And nowadays, if you're talking professionally nowadays, you don't really even need this, because you're given the 3D model already, which has been pre-built by someone else, and you can just move that around. But I'm talking, as I said, my channel is predominantly for people who are interested in the traditional and wanting to draw, independent content creators. So I'm here to predominantly instruct you in character animation and character work, but I'm also here to show you how to do stuff like this, and also show you that if you're interested in character work, you don't need to read all this information where you're saying, now you got to work on this perspective and that perspective. If you predominantly want to be a character animator, then you're going to be wanting to spend more of your time and energy working on anatomy and character drawing and things like that. And some of that energy you will spend learning perspective and improving all that stuff. But don't, if you're one of those people that just feels overwhelmed and lost about what should I learn, and there's too much to learn and how much, don't kill yourself. It's not necessary. Learn and specialize in the thing that you want to specialize in, right? Now I've got to kind of feel my way along here for the panels of the door design, right? So that would probably be in the middle, like that. So that gives me a good framework to shade around for the background. Now I have the floor. So one of the things I'm going to do to make this horizon line a lot more interesting is I'm going to start putting some stonework on the surface of the floor like that. And now I'm going to make sure my lines are nice and intuitive, because we're not really going to use these lines. We're going to put our stonework in them. All right. So that's my bad. That should be. See, I was following the stones. You see how you can easily get lost, right? So let's go along here like that. That's better. Now I will create a grid, but a kind of lumpy grid, right? And what that lumpy grid will help me do is it will help me place my stonework in these sections, right? So my stonework is placed in these sections. I'm kind of going over it and under it, and again it's all going to be shaded, and there's going to be skeletons and bones on the floor to make it look more populated and less technical, even though this drawing is far from overly technical, right? You've all seen how I've done it, but it still looks like, oh, everything looks so perfect in a box and here and there. So it's all about getting rid of that effect with the populating the drawing, right? All right, now before I continue with this, there's a feature on hair. So if I turn, unfortunately my webcam disappears. Let me get my mic here. So you'll be able to see this. There's a lot of development art for the temple we talked about. So he's in the entrance, he's about hair. So there's these big slabs that are we've just seen on the camera that I've drawn those heading towards that. I've changed the length of them so the circle isn't so far in there. And there's going to be some pillars, and I'm using this pillar as an example because if we look at the previous panels, we look here, he sees, excuse me, got to put the webcam back. Okay, so if we look at the previous panels, he sees these guys hanging as he's walking in, but we don't quite see, we see this little pillar behind him here. So this is the reveal shot, this is the reveal shot where those pillars are going to be. And if we look at this drawing here, that we're doing, you see this is a nice drawing, but it doesn't really, it's not even a nice drawing, but it's got a nice feel to it, but it does, this is too forced, he's too small, it doesn't really, as I said, this has to kind of be a drawing where we put it together a little bit, right? But it's more these pillars here that we're going to be putting in. So I've got those kind of worked out in my photo, which is this here, right? So let's go back to that. There we go. So now I've got to kind of like over this, I'm gonna work out my pillars, right? So my pillars are gonna be high about here, right? Probably about here. I'm gonna shade in a little bit where I think they need to be, intuitively like that. And I'll do it on the other side as well. So the perspective here will be a little bit different. So we're gonna look at the width out there like that. So that's gonna give me some idea. So now I'm going to take away some of the brickwork here. My putty eraser, and I'm going to intuitively draw in the pillar. Now at the bottom of the pillar is a bigger chunk, which is gonna be like this, probably in line with that. Let's keep everything kind of in line, make it uniform. So that's gonna be like that. Then I'm going to change the pillar design from the previous one. We can use that at another point. I'm going to keep this one a little bit simple and just keep it straight, but indent it very slightly like that, and indent that like that. So I've pushed the angle, I've made it a lot lower here. Again, the ceiling is too much in view. It's not as natural as it would be if we were looking from a lower angle. I'm tempted to want to put that in there because the skeletons are going to be hanging here. So you see this, there's a lot to this drawing. We're 30 minutes in, so not too bad, right? So I'm going to have to get this out. And I'm going to put this along here like that. There. That helps me with that. We want that to add up. Some things we need to add up a lot more than other things, right? So originally this was in line with this, so actually let's bring that down. So my ruler helped, but it wasn't really as accurate. So you see again, the what I'm doing is I'm a perspective an architect would be saying that I'm a wanker. I'm pulling and playing till it feels nice. You see, so I'm as hard on myself as I am on others. So that's what keeps things real. Okay, so that's what I'm doing here, because it. But I must stress, while I'm having a little joke at my own expense, I do understand enough about perspective drawing to get this to appear right. Okay, so the question is do the digital puppeteers, some of them do, the ones that do CG, do they know enough about animation law, right, to get that right? This should probably be a little bit more in, like that. I'm going to put the ruler away because it's addictive, and you want to stay away from that on a drawing like this, right? So this is going to be more like this, higher actually, so to the top. That's better. Now I'm going to go back here. The line was wrong. Not that it matters, because there's going to be skeletons on top of this thing, and there's going to be a lot of shading. But since I'm doing this as a live drawing, I may as well work a little bit harder to share some tips with you all about how to get things a little bit more accurate. Alright, so now we have that. So I have got my character to worry about in all of this as well. So it seems like, well, you're going to rub it all down after doing all that drawing. Well, yes, because if you remember, we need to build on top. And that was only the blueprint, right? So it's going to be rubbed down, but there's going to be enough of it left for me to build on top of it, right? And that's how these drawings work. So that's the most important thing. Like, people are so into their digital software and tools that they don't understand that traditional artists have been doing what they do all the time anyway. It's called a putty eraser, folks, and it isn't very expensive, right? So I'm gonna get my putty eraser and I'm gonna knock that back, right? And that's for now all I need, because I'm going to worry about characters now, and then we're going to dress the background up around the characters, right? So in my sketches here that I took a photo of, you will see that I've kind of had a little play. He's going to be quite small, so he doesn't have to be that accurate, but what we want is we want it to hook up. Hook up is very important to this panel here. His pose, the way he's standing, the 3 arrows, there's a body next to him as well as one there, although we won't see that. We want that to hook up, right? So we go from that to that, and then we have the reveal to this. As I sit here watching, I can't help but ask, what size sketchbook is he using and what panel measurements? It's not 16 by 9. I'm eyeballing it for the sketchbook. To be honest, I'm very, very intuitive when I work in my sketchbook. It's obviously feels like 16 by 9, but it's not quite that, right? It's an A5 sketchbook, okay? That's that pencil. I don't use the blue as much, so the blue is not so that's literally the size, okay? of the sketchbook. Unfortunately, the way the webcam's set up, I can't go out any wider than that. Right, let's draw the character in. I don't normally draw with the sharp pencil, but as it's so small, I want to get my positionings right. Before we continue, let's have a little bit of chat. Let's see what people are saying. Got my mouse here, right? I'm gonna read the screen in front. Bum, bum, bum. We've got Charlene saying I have a circle template like that. My daughter loves to draw her cat characters. Awesome. Galen's enjoying watching me draw. Thank you. Rusty Rebels, we answered that question. Druby, how you doing? With a bright green thumbnail now, or avatar. Michael Land. Mr. Leon, as I work on my shot while AMB draws his own, I can't help but wonder why I feel so wrong. I just want to improve a layout pose with a better suggestion of my own. Stick to the layout pose is all I can do. Yeah, well, anyway. With TV, it's often like that anyway, even back in the traditional days, right? So don't beat yourself up too much about it. Alright, now, let me figure out my guy. He's gonna be standing here. Alright. My guy is gonna be standing here blocking the doorway. Right? The skeleton warrior is gonna be lying in front of him like that, mate. Just like that. So the skeleton warrior is gonna be about here. Don't know why when I said skeleton warrior I felt compelled to be like a British Cockney. Skeleton warrior. He's skeleton warrior. That's what he is. So his hair like this. His feet are going to be in a triangle pose up here like this. So you see the perspective is not anywhere near as dramatic as what was in my head. You see, that's in my head. That's my childlike brain. And he's that small on the screen. Scale, no perspective. But that's the initial childlike vision. But then we've got to bring it in, right? Maybe I can push it a little bit more like that. You see, I'm populating my shot now. And we've got the other body, which will be lying here somewhere, like that. The other skeleton warrior will be lying with his legs over there, like that. And then we've got a skeleton. Yeah, Mr. Skellington. I've lost half of my audience by playing around with that Cockney accent, but who cares? I'll talk like that some more and then the rest of them can go. Right, and then we've got the big head in the foreground. Hair like this. And his arm and hand will be like this. Maybe I'll take the head down a little bit. Why? Because remember the 3 arrow thing that we did? There's 3 arrows in the backs of the skeleton warriors, right? So now I'm thinking of getting the I knew Galen would be laughing about that. Now I'm thinking of getting the composition of these 3 arrowheads in there. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by drawing this guy. Maybe I can just change my camera a little and zoom into my sketch pad. It's going to be very tight, but I can always zoom out. Let me go to my webcam settings. Let me go into configure video. Let me go into camera control. Let me go into zoom. Now, let's see what that looks like. Now, when I move around, it might get a little bit out. So I've got to give you a little bit of space. But hopefully, that's a little bit better. Is it focusing? Yes, it's focused. All right, there we go. Let's apply that, right? And if I want to zoom out, I'll do that again. It's not that hard. It's not that hard to do all this technical stuff. Right, so let's look at this scribble that we've done, and let's go in here and think about silhouette, right? So I'll think about the silhouette of the man's face. This is where silhouette really comes into play. And even though he's wearing his cloak, I want to get his proportions right. So his hands are going to be here like this, and his legs are going to be out here like this. Now about horizon lines, let me give you a quick little tip on horizon lines. You either want your character to be behind the horizon line, right? So your character is either behind the horizon line, or you want your character inside the horizon line. Let's put it in a little bit more, right? Never have it on the horizon line, right? It doesn't sit. It feels amateur. Okay, so that's a little tip for you all as we go on that. So his feet are going to be a little bit inside the horizon line, right, to bring him onto the set. Right. That means as I'm doing that, that his silhouette has to change a little, like that. Now I can think about his cloak, right? Think about the silhouette of his cloak. So it'll be around this and coming more straight off that arm there like that, right? So that is all I'm going to do for now of the rabbit character. Since you change the shot from mid shot to a wider, won't impact the clarity of the shot if your character is smaller or if the focus of the shot of the room. No, not at all. And this isn't a mid shot. This is a close-up. Right? Not a mid shot at all. It's a close-up. What we're doing is the staging as we're walking in. We're not seeing his environment. We're in with him. We're following him as he's walking through here. We're looking at his facial reactions. It's dark. We want to know what's in there, and we're looking at his facial reactions as cues, right? We're getting a glimpse of what he's seeing. We want to see more, but we're back to his reaction. So he's giving us a cue of like, what are we looking at? What are we looking at? So we're keeping the audience kind of like going where, like, in with him, like, you know, we're seeing it for the first time, but he's seeing more than we are, right? So the audience is thinking like that. So even here now, we're looking at his foot stepping on a hand. Oh my God, what's that? Right? Okay, there's this here. So it's a very kind of like keeping the audience in with him. And then eventually, you know, we're going to look over his shoulder to see what he's looking at again. We're going to see him register that. And then we're going to cut wide before we cut away to a different character or a different scene. We're going to cut wide to leave it as a statement. That's the establishing shot. That's his environment. So that's the way that that works, and it's rather than just giving you everything straight away, it's giving you that at the end. That's the staging there. Staging 101, people. Staging 101. Right. So now we're gonna have the head of the guy. This guy's body is gonna be here, and his arm is gonna be here in front of him. So I'm going to take this, knock this back a bit. Right. So the arm is probably what's going to help me with this most, right? So then his scapula is going to be here, right? Now he has got some garments on him like that. So this is going to be more straight. And his hat is going to be like that, right? So now we've got the rear view. So his pelvis is going to be here, and his boots and his feet. So I'm going to give him big kind of boots that'll help work that perspective. Actually, let's bring it out a bit more, like here. Let's bring that boot down a bit more there, like that. Perfect. Then we'll bring the other boot out to the side. Bring it in. This will help the perspective. So just shapes again, and the trusted putty eraser to help consolidate that shape, right? So silhouettes and shapes to get all this right. So let me consolidate this. His boot is here, right? His other boot is here, like that. We're then gonna have some of his garment out here like this, coming to the side. His body, upper body is here, his arm is here, his hand is here, his head is here. So again, it's the shapes, especially in the darkness, that we're going to see. And one very effective thing I'll show you for that was also in our other image. Mr. Leon is probably watching the stream a little bit late. A skeleton night. So remember this guy here, right? All I did was just draw a few things and then use the side of my pencil and a putty, and suddenly he looks so as if he's really detailed, but you know, just a few strokes, right? As long as the silhouette is good, right, in a scene like this, that's all we need, right? We want our characters to be working in silhouette in harmony with all of this. So now the other head, right? So again, before I get too carried away with the head, I'm gonna think about his arm, right? So the ulna here, he'll have a little bit of armor. Again, I may use different armor, but I haven't designed that many skeletons. I've designed tiger skeletons for a reason, alright? I'm giving a little bit of the story away, but I've only just had a little scribble at one baboon skeleton and a few goat skeletons. There's gonna be, like, as I said, if this was a full-fledged budget, the production designer would spend like a week or so on a populating this entrance with different skeletons, you know. So this arm is going to be here, the scapula is going to be here, but the scapula armor of this guy is here. So his armor, so I'm just referring to that, would be something like this, with some reference to that there, like this. Now his helmet, I don't need to see the helmet, I've got my scribble here to figure that out. Almighty Savage Animator, nice to have you here. You said you've just discovered this channel. Well, the universe has presented it to you for a reason, and I'm very has brought us together for a reason, so it's my pleasure to have you here, and you are most welcome, my friend. Right, so this comes here like that, and we're going to think about I will worry about the bones later. I'm getting too fidgety with this guy because I'm enjoying drawing bones. You all know how I love to draw bones. Right, so let's just leave that like that at the moment. So we can see this is becoming something interesting with the zigzag composition, right? Then we're going to have the 3 arrows in his back, right? One here, and probably one a little bit more in the foreground to help sit that, right? We got to draw nice and hard on here in a minute. He's got an hard on. I can't help myself with the Freudian slips, right? So this one has to be like that. Something about hanging out with you guys. I blame Galen. If he's still online, I blame Galen for my juvenile behavior, right? It's nice to be able to switch from deep philosopher into juvenile, childish, banal, base humor. Alright. I can't get too excited about this being done. There's a lot involved in this drawing, okay? We got to put skeletons on here. But what I am going to use from my little childish scroll here is I'm just going to use these as reference, because I'm not, I don't have to go back and look at the close-up, where is it, and try to mimic that, it's okay, right? It's gonna be hitting the light, the skeletons are gonna be down by his side, so I'm gonna put that here. Now the shadow is screwing up. I'll put that on my Cintiq. There we go. I can glance up. So now here we're going to have, and I've got to think about the size of the goat skeletons. So there's going to be one goat skeleton up here with its legs like this, right? There's going to be another one here with its legs out like this. So I'm thinking of triangle into this negative space here, right? So if you want to think about this, right, he's here, we're dividing the composition like this. It's kind of like helping that. Then there's going to be another skeleton here like this, right? I'm kind of losing the anatomy there a little bit, but that'll do. And there's a lot of rope binding and tying around this thing, but I might leave that out for now. I might be trying to design too much. But just to remind you, as this is not just a storyboard panel, right? If I was working on a top, well, this is a top production. This is one of the best productions in the world, but a production with a huge budget, rather, I could then pretty much say, okay, well, somebody else has already designed all this. I don't need to go and detail in as much as you're seeing me doing here right now, right? It's all been done. All I have to do is give a feel for it, right? With a nice rough scribble, almost like that childish drawing that I showed you earlier, which may have had all the shading and all that, but it was very, very what was in my head. Everything about the drawing was technically wrong, right? But that would have possibly been enough, right? Because we don't care. It's not going to be seen in production. It's a storyboard image, right? It gives the feel, it gives the mood. That would have been enough. But as I'm designing this project as an independent, it's my baby, I don't have people working with me, I have to think about environment design. I have to put myself as the director and the art director and all of these different hats that I'm having to wear. I have to put myself in those shoes. I have to really get a feel for the environment. And this is also good if you're a storyboard artist and somebody else has already designed it. You get a much better storyboard because you're able to get a feel for the environment, therefore tell a better story, right? So just kind of like fudging over this stuff and not having a go at designing it will be of detriment to the project, you know, because the project could, one of the things, as I said to many people who are really getting into this project as they're seeing me doing it, I'm saying, well, it's a storyboarder's dream. I mean, the whole thing is interesting if you think of it. All he has done, right, is he's walked through a door and looked around, right? It's the environment that's making this place so fascinating. So it's that we're investing in, right? It's not really the if it was just scribbles, we wouldn't really be investing so much interest in there. So when we get funding to do this thing properly, well, it is being done properly, but to do these things with a crew rather than just me, shall we say, and we can get more specialized crew members in. So while I think I'm pretty decent at concept art, and I'm more the storyboard and character designer and animation director, right? It would be really nice to have somebody who's got a background in production design giving their suggestions, bringing their experience to the table to say, that's a great start, AMB, but how about we take it this way? And I'll be like, yeah, that would be even better. Let's do it. Now, it could be possible where I'm like, I kind of prefer what I had, but then they would still be able to build on it with their better understanding, particularly of mood and light and color, than mine, right? Because that's what they spend their life doing. I spend a portion of my life doing it, but not as great a portion as those guys, right? So it's very important to respect expertise, which is why filmmaking and animation is very much a collaborative process. Okay, so now we can see that when I started off with that very kind of rough but slightly technical image, you can see why I had to do that, because we're kind of framing everything nicely like this, but the lighting and everything is going to help this all work and look even better. So we're 1 hour in, so it's taken an hour to do the meat and potatoes of this. Now before I go and rub it down and start detailing the characters first, I'm going to have a look at the groundhopper guy and draw him in, right? So I'm getting really close. In fact, I'm gonna knock it back already because it's a little strong. In fact, let's just do it, right? Let's just knock all of these guys back now. Right, and let's start. So here I'm going to start with his eyes and his nose, like that. Literally as small as the pencil width, but I'm trying, you don't have to, but I'm trying to get something of his expression in there, right? Because the character will read and this will come down here like that. That's enough. Now I'm going to kind of roughen his garment a little bit lighter than the head, because he's going to have his other garment on top of it. Right, that's going to be his hand. Like that. His other hand probably going to be covered mostly, but I'll give myself the wrist like that. His pants. His feet are concealed at the moment. That gives me an idea for the length of his pants. Right. So it's be more up here. The belt will be a little bit higher. Tweaking this slightly. This is almost like jewelry sculpting, right? Bring that up a bit. So now we're going to go over for the hood and this side for the hood here. There we go. So very, very tiny. Now his other foot, his foot is going to sit inside, as I mentioned. Now the other hand is going to be on top. So you see, the reference sketch really helped, and even though like that is tiny, right? Tiny, but we have something in this tiny panel that gives a little bit of character to the guy. Now I'm gonna go and do our skeleton man. Will be a little bit bigger, right? So let me quickly look at his sleeve. No, it's ripped at the front. Right, so there we go. Right. So the sleeve is out like that, and the hand is there. The bone is going to come here, and let me just very quickly look at his armor design. Okay, the bone is inside there like that, so this comes out and in like that, and the arrows are in his armor, so he has something up here like this. His helmet is here. That's good. You know, the arrows are more a little lower. I'm going to exaggerate those arrows. There, like that. Bum, bum, bum. Live Fantasy is here. We're going to come around here with the armor inside. Now let's see what a little bit of his lumbar vertebrae and the sacrum goes there. We wouldn't really see that on this side, so let's just put that in like that, then bring that out. Let's just put a bit of fur there like that. Then we have the patella and the fibula would be on this side, but we got a nice big boot that's gonna help us with the perspective of the character. So we've got a boot there like that, and we've got a boot on this side here like this. This is going to be all dark to get that drawing a little bit more suggestive there. I just want to be kind of accurate, right? It's really small, but that's good. That's good, right? Are we seeing me, right? I can just see. You don't need to raise a hand. I just saw that comment and got confused. Alright, now let's tackle the foreground. It's going to be a little bit easier. Alright, we've got this chunk of armor coming in here. Like that. The hand, it's this bit of bone here. Then we've got the armor, which comes over him like this. That places down, so that's like chainmail armor where we can just detail a little bit on that. So then here we'll have the fur. You can hear my cat. He's getting upset for some reason. Then we'll have a little bit of his thing going around the head. Oh. I'll just get rid of that. There. Let me put my phone on silent. Excuse me. Right. We have that around there like this. Please be quiet, girlfriend. So we have the teeth here like this. There we go. Now the arrows. So this arrow I'm going to change very slightly like this. Right. So this arrow, as I'm getting carried away, I forgot that I've zoomed in and you might not be able to see what I'm drawing. Alright, so let me just move this way. Let's bring those back a bit. And yeah, not ideal. Maybe we'll bring this one further down. But it'll do. It'll do. I can't get too fussy over this, right? It's suggestive stuff. It's not the final background art. It's just enough to build on if we wanted to do some final background art and we didn't have the budget to play anymore, right? Often big feature films have budgets to play, right? But when you don't have a budget, sometimes you gotta get a real good professional to just come and do his thing, which is what happened when I was on a project called Soccer 442. It's the project that I turned down working on Tim Burton's Frankenweenie for because I loved the fact that I was given a blank card, a blank check or whatever, to just work my expertise, and they didn't have a budget, they needed it done. I was able to just go and do pretty much whatever I wanted to do, and pretty much for most cases the first thing that I did was used, right? Because it was that kind of project, and working on a project like that really helped me big time. It elevated me from just being a simple story man, going from project to project, deluding myself thinking I'm working on these big features and I'm so shit hot, to really understanding what it's like to be in charge and to call the shots. Please be quiet. Right? Go on, out you go. Sweetheart, come on. No, out, both of you out. Sorry about that. Having her moaning in the background. I love that cat a lot, but I don't. I've got things to do. So, of course, my blue pencil is going to come in and really make these guys pop, right? But at the moment, I'm just going in here with my red pencil and going over the stonework that I kind of blotted out a little before, and now it's just kind of like line noise, making it look detailed, more detailed than what it is, right? So Hopefully that helps. What are we like? 1 hour 19. Not bad for 1 hour 19 on a drawing like this. Alright, so now we're going to do the hanging skeletons. So for my hanging skeletons, I'm going to see if I have... no, I'm just going to keep that. That'll do. I'm just going to kind of draw suggestive what I've got. I can't get too fussy here. Now my hands are here. What are you seeing with my hands here? You're able to see this, right? So let me just remember the goat skull, right? Because I can't remember goat skulls off the top of my head. Okay. They have a large nasal cavity like a horse, but with sharp front teeth and lots of incisors. Okay, I can remember that. Let's turn that this way. I've got to try and think about what you guys are able to see, right? Let's give him some horns like that. Just enough to populate the scene. So a drawing like this, if you really look at it, you'll go, oh shit, there's a lot of thought gone into it, right? That's what we want. Production design, right? So they've got like Spanish conquistador armor, right? So they'll kind of have big boots as well, so they'll be more kind of from the Spain, these goats. Alright, so he's hanging there. Apologies if my hand is covering everything. I'll just step back and you guys can see after I make a few lines. Right, so he will have sleeves and arms, and of course the shading is what will really make these guys stand out when we do them. Let's give him some kind of loin there and loincloth or something, and bring his boots further in like that. This one I can be very suggestive with, because it'll be all dark. Let's just have the head, right, and the arm up there like that. Let's give him the pants that the other guy had. Just tie those together. Right, now I've got to remember the pillar, right, that they were on. And then we'll start putting some chips and cracks in that pillar behind, right? As long as I know that pillar is behind there, let's put a little bit of rope, a little bit of hanging rope around there to help that sit. Alright, so we've got that there. So we've got our goats, our baboons, our rabbit, all in that environment. I can put my sketch pad like that now. So now this side we'll have the goats again. Right, so one here. Again, I've got to think a little bit about the perspective and the angle that I'm looking at as I'm doing this, right? I got carried away with drawing his arms, but then we've got the other goat head. Let's just scribble in their eyes already, right? They've got to be done anyway, right? Got the other goat head. With the sharp teeth. Let's give him big horns. Out to the side. Like a ram almost. Right? Maybe he was the leader, right? So again, just suggesting things to yourself when doing drawings like this. It makes the storyboarding aspect a lot more enriching. So we want to think about his knee and his boot here, like this. Now there's a little inconsistency going on here, but it's okay. I'm aware of it. So what would happen is, as this is concept art, he has walked past this, right, and seen this, but here I've got it here in front of him, right? So those inconsistencies will have to be tackled later on. So this is the kind of thing that sometimes happens when you're doubling up with story sketch and visual development, and so we're losing a bit of very, very important flow and continuity there. So just bringing that to your attention. So that's what makes it a little bit different from, you know, I wouldn't say all, you know, some comics do have those storyboard sensibilities, but in storyboard you got to be extremely mindful of the consistency. So however nice the drawing is or what you want to put in there, it's got to kind of marry along with it. So if I was doing this painting, I would push this element back to his level rather than having it all lead the eye in, which is what I was thinking from a drawing level. So very important. I may write a note there. In fact, let's do that already. Check consistency, I don't even know, of flow, right? Now we'll point to those skeletons. So that gives me a little bit, if I come back to this, of a refresher, because sometimes you can miss some stuff like that, and some people would say, well, who cares, you know, it's a cartoon, it's animated, you know, it'll go by in the blink of an eye. There's many live action movies where they haven't, you know, there's continuity issues and things like that, but if you know it's there, like you don't, if it's an accident, then sure, you know, you missed it, but if you know it's there, then you certainly don't want to put it in your project. Right. So now along here, so we've kind of framed him like that. And now we're going to start building the brickwork around it, right? And these bricks are going to look all nice because they're cracked. Right, and we'll give them some dimension, put some holes in the wall, right, to make it, give it a little bit more depth, right. And when I smear and smudge these brickworks to drop focus, right, because that's how we drop focus with pencil drawing and traditional drawing. You don't really want to shade with the smudging, right? It's just there to suggest gradient, and if you want to have something off focus, you can soften it by smudging, right? So that would be the reason, right? So adding these lines in here. Now, along here, to make all this look a little bit more interesting, let's just get the door in the background first, right? So you've got the door in the background where the light will be bursting behind him, causing everything to be rim lit, right? So again, the lighting is another thing we've got to talk about. Now we only see that side of the door, that's fine. The ceiling I'm going to give some texture to, like that. But to make this interesting, we're going to have some drapes, right? So we've got curtain drapes going along the wall, ripped here like this, right? And it's continuing up along this side of the wall. Right. So that makes our drawing a little bit more interesting and gives him a little bit more drama and feel of this being a kind of temple of some sort. I thought he was turning around, taking in his surroundings, so the door behind him is the entrance to the ruins, not heading deeper into it. No, he's come through the door. He hasn't turned around, right? So, again, you would need more panels, so these are just beats, right? So the door is behind him. He's walking in through the door. Now you could crane the camera around him, right? And he's looking, right? So this was the thing that I mentioned. So he sees those guys hanging on the pillars. He looks at that. He's continuing to move forward now. Okay, so this would need some either a pull out or a camera crane or another pose here to hook up to this pose to suggest that. So, but I'm not doing all those additional poses at the moment. I'm just working the shots out, which is why I'm drawing detailed like this. So as he's continuing forward, he almost steps on something in front of him, which he sees as this guy, right? So the door is still very much behind him. As we then see, we reveal what he's looking at. So that's how that works, Charlene. So then here we're going to just inside where I drew all those lines of the bricks, right? I'm gonna make these crumbly little bricks, right? Which will add some character to the environment. Right? So we're gonna put those there like that. There we go. And similar on the other side. So now you can see what we started with, why I was not too caught up with the perspective, but as I was tackling the perspective, I did miss the continuity issue of these goats being him having already passed them. So they should be kind of a little bit behind him, right? So this is almost like set design, this drawing here. So as I mentioned, it's doubling up in that regard. So again, while I'm putting in all these lines, right, a lot of these lines are going to get lost in smudge, but it builds, I'm looking for the ceiling, but it builds a, that's the ceiling image, but it builds enough, it's giving me enough to work with, right, to start shading it and glazing it and knocking things back and bringing things forward. So when you're doing digital painting, absolutely everything is shapes, right? But as a draftsman, as a drawing, you know, you're making those shapes out of line, and I stand by everything when I say line is king, right? You really want to have a strong drawing if you want your, whether you're just doing painting or concept art, if you want that thing to look extra good, right, then you really want the drawing to be strong, right? So all of this is going to fade into darkness, right, and we're going to bring the light around this guy here, but have enough line material here to help that register together, right? All right, so now things are getting pretty serious. I think in live no one asks about software. Yeah, that's great, isn't it? That gets rid of the buffoons. Doing it this way gets rid of the morons, right? So this comes, let's start bluing stuff in. But before we start bluing stuff in, I'm going to use a little bit of red shading to indicate my master values, right? Which is gonna help get this drawing along. 1 hour 37 minutes. We've kind of got everything worked out in line now that needs to be worked out. All right, so first things first, there's gonna be darks on the ceiling. Is gonna be kind of all dark, but for the sake of the drawing we're gonna darken it a little bit more closer to the door, right? Now I'm going to come in here and start picking out those shapes, right? Giving the ceiling some texture. Right. Then, let's see, I kind of forgot about the brickwork in here, but it's okay. Can just put lines, dots, and shapes. So this is all going to be darks. darks here, darker here, darker here. If you're wondering why I'm darking where I want the light to be, I'll show you in a minute, right? So all that Bob Ross moment, right? Gotta be bold, but gotta be brave, right? So let's just dark all this here. Smudge all that. Right. Now I'm gonna get my pencil, the harder eraser. I'm gonna put a few streaks of light coming there, right? And as I start building around it, it's gonna look even better, right? So now I'm gonna change my grip, and I'm gonna be extra dark between the bricks, right? I'm not touching the characters, right? I'm not touching the characters. They're going to be the things I'm making to look pop and read as we're doing this thing, right? So at the moment I'm just knocking the background back, but giving it enough detail to feel like a background, right? Let's have this. We'll bring things forward and backwards with darker tones later, right? So let's just knock this in the background, change my grip, be a little bit darker with these areas. It's very relaxing and therapeutic doing these kind of drawings. Yeah. And we're going to knock that back. These arrows have to be brought out, but my blue pencil is going to be used to bring my characters out. Again here, I'm going to put more pressure, but I'm not going to be so hard. So it's almost like having a undertone with this red, right? So no shadows under the characters or anything like that at the moment, and even then I want to avoid doing that. I'm upset my favorite character is dead in my show. Was it a good death or a bad death? It's funny because you're almost sounding like the Great One with that comment. Life Fantasy. Right, I'm gonna pick out my characters with the putty eraser, have them glowing a bit so they all kind of stand out. Now we gotta make it read, right? Because well, it's you know, it serves its purpose, and you could leave it like that as a story sketch, and you know, but we want it to be more presentable, because that's one of the pleasures of doing hand-drawn animation, all that, the pleasure of drawing, right? Right, so let's get right in there and get the silhouette of our main guy. There he is. You could of course use black pencil, right? If you don't want to use color rays or blue and red, you could use soft 2Bs, HBs. I've done that before, but I love the whole blue and red thing because of my hand-drawn animation background, it certainly doesn't have to be this way, right? So if anybody's wondering why is he using blue and red, for the mere purpose that I want to and I like it, right? In many cases on Universal Pictures Tales of Despero, we did the boards in blue, predominantly in blue, but they were scanned in and then desaturated to be grayscale, right? So a lot of hand-drawn animators are working on that film. They just loved drawing in blue color rays. You give a real animator a color rays and he's pretty much the happiest at their happiest. Right, there we go. So that's that. Now I'm not going to change pencils yet, but I'm going to throw in some values here. Softly rim lighting him. Right. So that throws in some, give him some off light, right, like that. So that puts him in place. Now we have our fallen warrior. Again, it's the silhouette. I'm going to put that in place. Hopefully you guys are, the last time we did this, people really enjoyed the stream. But sometimes it can be a little monotonous watching certain things get tidied up again and drawn again. But then again, that's what the process is about. So hopefully it's sharing stuff with you and helping those of you that want a more traditional workflow, helping you understand how you can keep the drawing moving without getting, I've used a putty eraser to knock things back, but I haven't really gone in there and used my eraser to correct my drawing, whether it's the perspective or anything like that. It's very minimal, right? So again, here I want to just give myself some values on the sky. Right. Like that. I'm going to sit him on the background by keeping those values intact. Like that. Really, it would probably be something more like this from the light source, but we're not going to focus too much on that. Foreground guy. This. So these streams are a little bit different to what you see me doing. Now I've done background in my Santa series in the edutainment archives, I've done a lot of examples where I've shown you how we designed the lounge and the fireplace, but hopefully like this, a drawing like this, and even the last one you saw me do, they weren't really about the character, which is pretty much what I tend to generally focus on, right? And what I hope that's going to been beneficial for you is you've been able to see, again, particularly how to do concept art and development art and story art or background art or layout art. You've been able to watch me do that without relying on any software trickery or software tools. So again, it's very much an example of when people ask me what software, I'm really reinforcing my statements of, look, everything you see me do when I work in the Cintiq digitally, I do it the same way on paper, right? This is the way we do things, right? And this is the way I would storyboard professionally before the advent of Toon Boom Storyboard Pro, and even when I would storyboard in Photoshop, I would draw the background on a separate layer, right? And I would draw all of the moving elements on another layer so I could just put more panels, right? Which, as I was explaining to Charlene, as she got lost in the geography is extremely important when you're doing storyboards and staging. So that's why you see, if you look a little bit earlier, I showed you the map of the environment, the rough map of the temple that I have, right? To get all this working and flowing, right? So more panels would be definitely needed to watch an animatic of it, but depending on your experience, and like I'm basically planning the shots here, so I'm not so caught up in the animatic creation stage yet. But it's all, on Universal Pictures Tales of Destro and Fantastic Fox for 20th Century Fox, I believe, funnily enough. The whole things that were done on paper were, we would draw the background on a separate panel, and then we would draw all the different frames of the character, maybe three. It would normally be about three to four per scene, to give the animatic a nice animated feel, right? Sometimes one panel would be enough, but it would be more, that kind of thing. So just to bring this right back to what this is all about, is like you're seeing me doing on paper now exactly the same way that I would tackle it with the software, right? That's all there is to it. Right, let's make all this sit on the floor. Like that. Let's make the floor entirely blue. Right, so now to bring the lighting on these guys even more, I'm gonna get my red. I'm gonna heavy that to make these guys the values pop and stand out. Right. Bum, bum, bum. Right it there like that. Right, so that's the foreground element. So now I want to be a little bit softer with the background. So first I will be hard around here. Where that pillar is. Then I'm going to just shade on top of that. That's more or less done. I'll just go in there and blue in here. So no pressing hard with the pencils for the wall here. It's just the feeling of a wall, right? And to bring the pillar more forward, we'll just create it a little bit darker around here, right? Like that. There we go. And I'll do that on the other side too. So we'll go around our goat man. I'll bring that down. There, like that. Let's see what people are saying in the chat. The lovely Hervonia Baker has turned up. I think people are just chilling. Just maybe you're all working along with the stream on. See how it all turns out. But thanks for hanging with me anyway. So we don't have as much of a chat today. Right, there we go. So that's that half. Let's clean around the sides. Right. Let me focus on the pillars now. Okay, this was some rope that we put here. This was the horns of the goat. Right. So his feet. Now I'm going to be a lot more suggestive with these particular characters, because I don't want to be seeing so much of them, right? Just enough to indicate who they are, what they are, and where they are, right? So some hands, basically just the outline. Then the shading will do the rest. Right. So let's bring some red in there. Let's make it nice and dark down here. So I'm going to find my dark points. Just under the head. All the bits I want to stand out, I will leave light, right? In between here, in between here. There we go. Let's just soften that a little bit. Bring it off focus. And again here. Suggestive. Just like a painter would paint, right? It's all suggestive. It takes your eye off them and helps us keep an eye on what we want to look at in the foreground, right? Again here, we're going to have to do one final dark pass and light pass on top to bring things forward and back. But as I said, this is very much a building, you know, these kind of drawings are all like building blocks, right? So we're going to lose more focus going on this side. But before I do that, we're going to tackle this section, right, which we're going to have down like that. And the foot up here, this foot down here. So for me personally, it's definitely worth the effort, because as the director of the project, I have really gotten to know the environment, or what I want from the environment. So this, you know, while I haven't been able to give you a course in storyboarding and staging, because you can see there's so much involved. I've shown you little pre-sketches, pre-designs, suggestions, maps of the environment, right? So this is, as I mentioned before, it's doubling up. It's a storyboard panel, but it's also a piece of visual development art, concept art. So this goes into the extremely important law that we talk about, called the law of staging, right? So we're literally staging the whole scene, but we're not just staging it as an animator, right? We're staging it. Animation is also a medium of filmmaking. It's a medium of storytelling. So staging, the law of staging, which I don't teach in the Real Animator Training Library. I teach only the law of staging from an animator's perspective, and a little bit about drawing maps and all that. But the staging in terms of the storytelling is, there's a great deal of things that you're gonna have to learn, develop and understand in order to help these things enrich the project, because the project is very much projects are very much exciting and interesting because of all of the stuff that happens in here. Okay, I see someone on the chat who I'm gonna have immense pleasure. I'm gonna hide Xavier off the channel, right? I'm not even gonna put him on timeout. That does away with anybody looking to bring that attitude to my streams out, right? No second chances, no warnings. Back in the day of the samurai, if you annoyed a samurai, he would behead you. I won't go that far, but out off the stream, right? So that comes this way. So here I'm gonna focus on the drapes. Now I'm gonna get my eraser out and reaffirm the lighting that I put in, but I'm just making some of these drapes stand out so they pop when we do them. Let's just shade that, shade all that. That can just be done with smudging of the finger, like that. Stairs are very important things, but you can get down on the ground and do mountain climbers, Life Fantasy. Mountain climbers are, you know, great things, ways to have similar kind of workout. Right, so we've got the door, which we're going to heavy behind him. That's heavy in the ceiling. So this is getting really off focus, and I'm gonna bring a little bit of detail into the ceiling just to help bring everything together, right? Because it kind of got lost. Now I can use my shapes of shadow, right, to make my ceiling patterns even more interesting, right? Now we're going to really dark in some of those. It's going to be a lot of fun doing the lighting, right? That's like one of my favorite parts, is to, and that's like what, when you do like these kind of paintings, you can get the white. I can get a gel pen or whatever out if I really wanted to, but I don't. I'm not going to go that far with this image, but you can really have fun with that. Right, so let's first bring that down like that. Right, so before I do the lighting, I'm just going to give overall darkness to a certain circle around here. I'm creating a circle like this, right? I'm going to bring that darkness further this way and bring that further up. All right, now let's darken along here. Alrighty. And darken along here. Right. he would really be casting a long shadow, but I'm not going to worry about that. And we're going to darken these portions like this. Right. So now to have fun, I was just in the middle of watching the previous and I'm loving the red blue pencil. I'm learning as much as I can. Thank you, Echo. I know you love traditional medium. Right, so now the fun part, right? Now to add the rays of light behind the character, right? So 1, 2, you can get kind of carried away with this. Let's have a big long one coming out here like this. Further down like that. These would be more, this would be a little bit less on this, but I'm gonna cheat it because I think it's cool, right? To do that. Soften some of them, right? Now I'm gonna beef up just a little bit like that. Right? Can bring some of that down like that. So we have some nice light on there. Now one more time, right? One more time, because it's vital and it needs to be done, right? If you were so inclined, right, you may want to get your putty eraser and go on all these edges, right, like this, but I don't really feel the need, right? I've already spent longer than necessary, but this is important. Right, so he's already kind of darkened up, but we're gonna get him in the rim light this time. Getting his face and thing is not so important. All right, we can just backlight him like that, and then bring his silhouette out, right? To really make that stand out, right? And if we want, we can shade dark around him just to make him stand out even more, right? Like that. So he stands out. Then again, I want this guy to stand out, right? So I'm gonna shade onto the floor with him and bring it back a little bit. We've got a little bit of the ground, which I will just pick choice elements to have them stand out, right? But we really want this guy to sit in the environment, so play with his shadow, but also use the hard outline to make sure it reads, right? Make that head stand out, make that shoulder stand out, all rimlet, right? Bring the darkness along there. Make these arrows stand out. So that now is a lot clearer. Foreground guy is going to be a lot of fun. So we're going to really darken that foreground, but really make sure that it's there to complement our skeleton, right? So that's going to be heavier. Darken that. Darken that. The darker it is, the more the light element will stand out, right? So highlights and shadows. Highlights and shadows. Right. So if those of you who watch the film Gladiator, where he says shadows and dust, shadows and dust, just replace that as an animator and think of yourself as a badass animator gladiator. Say highlights and shadows, highlights and shadows. Right. Then we've got this body here, which we can just make the arrows stand out more so than the actual body. Pick out little elements of this. Let's then darken the edges. To set all this together. There we go. And darken these edges. And finally, we don't want these guys to be just floating, so we're going to use darks to sit them in their environment. Not too much. Right. Again, we want everything to read, right? So it's like a balancing act of we want mood lighting, but we want these things to be read as this is what's the environment of the scene. So just a little bit of these drapes now behind, just for the sake of the drawing, having it all reading. Yes, there's drapes on the wall, there's stonework, there's brickwork here, there's stonework on the ceiling. There we go. I see that he is in the center in contrast to the rule of thirds. Is that to keep the focus on the MC due to all the stuff that may distract the viewer? No, I just like the composition, and the rule of thirds, whatever, right? He's not 100% in the center, it's at a lower angle. And as I said, you know, that's another thing I want to talk about with the difference between artists and technicians, right? The rule of thirds is an interesting rule, But you don't want your work to look textbook, right? You don't want it to have you don't want to limit yourself with that. When I did this composition, I had the horizon line and I put this along there, right? So essentially this composition was a horizon line, and he's along the middle, but he's about here, right? Then we're gonna frame it like this, and we're gonna put other things around it. It's kind of uniform, but then we're gonna lead the eye in with the skeleton like this. So for me, there are many other things to think about in composition rather than dividing the screen like a flat rule of thirds or some schoolboy shit like that, right? So the thing is you got to also understand the harmony between things, the shadows they cast, which I haven't really been able to explore on this. So this for me is enough. In this composition, I didn't, in the original kind of sketch, which was a nice idea, but look how giant this is and look how small this is, it just doesn't work. So this drawing has to make that work, right? So this I framed it more traditionally, right? So he's not in the center and whatever. But the other thing I said is this also is doubling up as a piece of concept art. So I'm thinking about composition, I'm thinking about things like that, but I'm also thinking about environment design, right? This is still storyboard drawing, right? Storyboard early pre-production drawing. If I was really hung up about the framing here, I could reframe this, right? It's wide enough, it's whatever enough, but I also want to be able to have an environment that I can refer to as I keep doing more storyboard art. As I said, when you're an independent artist and you don't have an art department that are feeding you stuff to look at as you're doing the storyboard, I'm literally having to develop this project on the fly, right? I'm going away, I'm doing research, I'm looking at skeletons and bones and temples. I looked at some Himalayan temples. I looked at some Eastern temples as well. But I'm just one guy, right? So I have to be very, very efficient with my time. I have to think to myself, okay, well, an establishing shot like this, you see here, I'm doing very much planning the contents of the shot. So an establishing shot like this of the environment, placing him in that environment, I'm dealing with more like a concept painting or a piece of concept art. Because then if I'm going to go to final shot or storyboard layout, I may well go back to the original composition, which was less of this here. I could push this back here because, as I said, check consistency for flow. So in a way, as I was doing this, I lost the flow of the storyboard because I switched into environment design. Because as you can see, as he's walking along here, he passes these guys already, right? And now they're in front of him, right? So again, I'm working all this out as I'm going along. So don't just, you see the title for this video is Drawing Traditional Animation Storyboards and Development Art. I named it that specifically because this is also doubling up as development art. So don't, as you're watching this, don't like assume or get confused that this is the way a storyboard art is done, right? I've mentioned before many times the storyboard in my initial sketch here. Where is it? Way back when I was playing with all these ideas, right? That's good enough for storyboard, right? That right there is good enough, right? In many ways, that's like most storyboards, that's a more interesting composition than this, right? But this doesn't really help me as a filmmaker figure out what all this is, which is nice as a suggestive digital painting, but it doesn't really help me figure out what is all this. So I may very well reframe this, right, for the final shot, but I need to understand, and here you can see I had him already pass those guys by, right, because here I've got my storyboard head on rather than my visual development head. So lots of things are going on as I'm developing this project, and what I'm really enjoying doing is sharing the process with you so you guys can see what it's like as an independent content creator if you want to be making your own projects, your own ideas, your own your own storyboards, your own animatics. So as I said, many people might not even notice the continuity issue, and we could just go with that in the storyboard and whatever. But if we're being super professional, we'll say, nah, this needs to be reframed and this needs to come back behind him here. He needs to be more in front. So I could scan that into Photoshop and rework it if I wanted to keep this image, but we're not being too precious about it. So interestingly enough, if we make a Groundhopper development art book for people who wish to fund this project in the crowdfunder, right, I may have this drawing with a little chapter, a little paragraph, a little explanation of stuff like what we talked about in today's stream. But it makes a great little workbook, right? So let me just go into my focus. Let me go into webcam because we're too close. Configure video. We now want to zoom out. Let's zoom. Oh, we've zoomed right out. Right, so we've zoomed right out, so that's all we can see. Right. So it makes a great little workbook, right? And I might even keep these drawings in here because it shows how all the problems are being tackled. So the next panel from here would be a change of the beat, a change of the scene. We could possibly, to keep continuity, to help the edit flow, I would cut to another skeleton's head, and then I would have a hand come in and pick the head up, and then we'll go on to this guy who's in the temple, in another place in the temple, doing his little sequence, and then we'll cut back to the Groundhopper. Or we may keep things in with the Groundhopper because what he's going to do is he's going to pick up one of these bones and he's going to light a torch. Awesome. Octavio says, I just went to the art store to get myself a sketchbook and some red pencils. Thank you, AMB. Be mindful that not all red pencils rub out though, okay? So these are Colorays pencils, right? I don't talk about software, but I talk about pencils, right? So, but even then you can play around with character drawing with some red pencil and draw dark black over them if you draw lightly with the red, Octavio. So there you go. 2 hours 29 minutes. Not bad to rough out a example panel of a small concept panel of Groundhopper in the temple. I'm gonna have to now think story-wise what to do next, whether to have him continue and find the bone or whether to introduce the Great One at this stage. I may not have the Great One talking just yet. I may have the Great One, you seeing a skull and you seeing a big hand picking the skull up and maybe crushing it, and then cutting back to the Groundhopper, just to perhaps keep the suspense of what the hell is happening in this temple. So you see the excitement and the fun of so many possibilities you can go when telling a story. Telling a story is so much fun, right? Okay, so I hear in storyboarding you should stage in a way that you are asking and answering questions. Is that always constant? I guess so. I mean, there are many ways of approaching it. Like anything, it's a conversation. You're having a conversation as an artist, as in asking and answering questions. But you're also creating a image that is having a conversation with the viewer. There's many conversations. It's kind of like a party going on here. Like the conversations I'm having is like, what's the continuity? Where's the lighting? What's the main purpose of this shot? Why are we looking at what, he's looking at him. Then I've got to have other questions. I want to convey a sense of peril. I want to convey a sense of, loneliness. I want to convey a sense of, suspense and, anxiety. So there's that conversation had. And then I've got to be asking the imaginary viewer, what do you think? What are you seeing? Are you seeing that? What kind of questions is the viewer going to be asking himself? So it's not just on a shot per shot basis. As I said very early on, I wanted us to get inside the temple but not see immediately, like when the doors open, to see this, right? I wanted us to kind of see his reaction to what's in the temple before we see what's in the temple, and then we get a glimpse, and then we're kind of seeing his reactions. So that's my thing that I want the viewer, how I want to present the temple to the viewer, right? So now we're then seeing as if the skeletons, are they alive, are they not alive, right? So now we're seeing it from the skeleton's point of view. We're seeing his foot, we're seeing everything from a low angle. It's almost like, are they trying to tell him something, right? So I'm asking myself these questions and answering them. So yes, that very much is the case. But also, my main thing is what do I want, what feeling do I want from this? I want a feeling of uneasiness and uncertainty, right? And I guess the questions I'm always asking myself primarily as I'm doing this is, are we uneasy? Are we uncertain? But do we want to see more? Do we want to go deeper and deeper into the temple, or shall we leave? Okay, well, we better not. We want to see more, and the more we reveal gradually, the more drawn in we get into saying, I want to see more. So then we reveal, well, there was a bloodbath here. I mean, this is crazy. Bodies hanging off the walls, bodies lying on the floor, a pattern of 3 arrows in between it. What is it? What is this? Some sort of Father, Son, and Holy Ghost thing? I mean, you got to so I would say live fantasy, you're right in that regard, but you've got to put on many different question and answer hats for the conversation, many different conversations. So the conversation of technical storyboard artist, is it working? Like I'm having about the continuity issue here. The conversation of storyteller, you know, what do I want to say about this scene? The conversation of cameraman, are we getting the best angle? Is it, you know, is it the conversation of audience? So to step away and look back and look at it as an audience and say, what am I thinking when I look at this? So very, very many conversations, many questions and answers from many different perspectives. And I think that's pretty much the way you would approach any work of art, whether you were doing a single piece, illustration or painting, or whether you were doing a piece of animation. But I guess with storyboarding, it's so much more deeper because the conversation is taken further and further and further, you know. So that's it. All right, so thank you very much for joining me on today's live stream. It's a lot of fun doing these panels. I won't do the whole Real Animated Training Library thing. Those of you who know, I have an amazing course, the world's best learning resource in the craft of hand-drawn animation, the Real Animated Training Library. Go to ambanimation.com and check it out. There's a ton of videos and information for you to get from that. We don't really do much storyboarding in Real Animated Training. It is very much for the real animator, the person looking to actually bring their character to life rather than create a film. This is very much, I've covered so much here beyond storyboarding in many ways. I've covered, in today's lecture, I've just not really covered, I've touched on. To say covered is an outright, you know, understatement. Not understatement, just a wrong. Because to cover this stuff and to teach this stuff is a whole film course, you know. This isn't just storyboarding, this is filmmaking. And these are the many different hats. You're seeing me wearing the hat of a production designer, a art director, a visual development artist, a storyboard artist, and all this kind of stuff. Birthday ramen, wow. I've never seen someone so excited about having ramen for their birthday. Happy birthday, Life Fantasy. Thank you very much, Charlene. Thank you very much, Akao. And that is it. So we are going to end the stream with, let's just go in a little bit tighter there for that. So and then we lose focus on that, you know. Let's just make the stream a little bit longer, and let's switch the webcam back to autofocus, because the next stream that I'm going to do, I'm going to have my face on and I'm going to need autofocus. So there we go. There's the autofocus of the story panel. So still very rough, but just enough detail for us to see things happening. And let's just play with the framing a little bit so you could see. It's funny trying to do this like that. I could reframe this, and then those skeletons would have to go further back, you know, as things like that happen. Right? So you can see how this can double up, you know. You could reframe it like that, right? You could put the camera on a rake. So that's part of the fun of this. You see, you're going to want to have to do a bigger drawing to explore that. Now I could have really made the drawing extra nice and turned it this way and done it big, but it already took, you know, almost 2 hours to do it that. So I don't have time to spend on that. So on to the next panel. Alright, see you all on the next live stream. We won't be streaming for a good 10 days. I'm going away for 10 days. I will be back and I'll see you on the next live stream.